Good morning to you. So excited to have the one and only Dominick Antonio with us all the way from Florida. I have just found out some of the most interesting things about this gentleman, and you are going to love hearing from Dominick today. We have several mutual friends, and so I've respected you from afar. Well,
Yeah.
Saturdays with Sherry, and because I want people to know how wonderfully diverse and unique you are. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Dominick Antonino. Shucks, I guess leadership wise, I guess the Army was my first bout of leadership. Got out in '96. Been in sales and shucks, since sales management, probably 20 years now. Worked in director levels, VP levels. Currently run a delivery side of a $40 million staffing company. So it's a lot of corporate experience, but then also church wise, started two churches, relaunched one, handed them over to other pastors. Been through. I would say I've had my hand in a lot of things over the years. It's kind of made me I'm not a jack of all trades, but I'm pretty diverse in what my experience has been in I guess you say the business world. And currently, my wife and I have started a garage door business. That's been, I guess we're in our 6 month now, so it's been a ride.
Well, congrats to you. So your middle
Thanks.
name should be leadership.
Yeah.
Wow. So how has this really happened for you? Because that's a lot of diversity. You've risen to the top in several different companies, venues, aspect of life, the church world. How does that happen?
By accident, by happenstance. Look, I don't have formal education. I've got a GED. I dropped out of high school at 12 in 12th grade. Not because I wasn't making it, I was just making bad decisions as a kid. Actually, my GED scores, they say, were college level. So, it was just making bad decisions. Went into the Army. And, I think just through life coming out of the Army and just kind of figuring out who I am and what I need to be and what I need to do has kind of brought me through a lot of different avenues. And so I think I've gotten here. I won't say by accident because I really don't think things are by accident. We make decisions and we go on them, but really just pursuing what I call greatness, which I believe greatness is defined by how we're designed, and what our purpose is. And I think everyone has greatness in them. And I think there's through pursuing that and trying to figure that out, it's brought me through a lot of different places. It made me who I am today.
Okay, I love what you said. Everyone has greatness, and we
Yes.
pursue the greatness that's within us. I think that is pivotal. So, you know that on Saturday mornings, the focus is on helping women to emerge into the leadership roles the
Mm-hmm.
way that they need to, should, want to. It's not a feminist thing,
Mm-hmm.
it's simply a being the best version of ourselves
That's right.
we can possibly be.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you see, or what do you perceive going on with women who struggle with leadership and getting to the top? Or are they able to get there? If so, why are they, or why are they not? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I want to frame this right. So please, I'm
Okay.
not trying to have a dramatic pause there, but
Well,
hey guys, forgive me. I'm on vacation. My lighting is not right and all that. So but the words will be the same. I think certainly women can rise to the top offices or whatever they pursue. I don't. I think those limitations are there's still resistance there. I think, but it is certainly possible. I worked 11 years for AMN, largest healthcare staffing agency, and that's the CEO is a female, and she started all the way at the bottom and worked her way all the way up to the top. and there's many of the senior leaders in that organization are females. So I would say a couple things, and I would go back to what you just said about being the best version of you. I think people in general, not just women, we struggle with wanting to be like the next person, right? Or
Mhm.
being like the person above us. And I think as we do that, especially in the corporate world, because sometimes we feel like we have to do it in order to rise. But in doing that, we lose out on who we are. And when you lose out on who you are, you lose out on your uniqueness and what strengths that you're bringing, the difference makers that you bring as an individual. And so the path is there. I think, across many different demographics, I guess you would say, barriers are being taken down. They are still there. I think it's important for us to know that they're still there, but it's more important to know who you are and what you bring.
Okay, you heard it, ladies and gentlemen. It's more important to know who you are and what you bring. And Dominic, I met with three different young progressive leaders
Mhm.
throughout this past week. And in every instance, we were going over it's okay to be who you are. They were like,
Mhm.
well, I'm not like someone else. It doesn't
Right.
seem to matter what age, what stage, what race, what class.
Yeah.
This seems to be such a common, pervasive
Mhm.
problem, and we keep looking at something out here when if we would just stop for a minute
Mhm.
and look at the gifts and talents we bring and be
Mhm.
okay with that.
Yeah.
I hear excuses from women all the time. I'm too young, I'm too old, I'm too
Mhm.
short. I didn't have a formal education, and yet we hear how successful you've been
Mhm.
with just giving what you had and going.
Mhm.
So really, I think maybe the battlefield is more in our mind
Yeah.
than
It,
it is in our circumstances.
yeah, I would definitely agree. I struggled with it myself because, and it comes from not knowing who you are, not knowing who I am. And there's that self-esteem thing. I dropped out of high school. I did this, and you go into the corporate world, and the corporate world has an image of success. And you have to understand that that image has been created by people who really don't understand who they are, and so they think that the only way to make it is to be like them, right? And so when we fall into that, we lose again our uniqueness and who we are. I would say this is really what gets the attention are results. If you can bring results, it's half the battle. It's not the whole battle, but it is half the battle. And you bring result. And I'm telling you, there's especially the workforce today. They're looking for leadership that's different from what they've seen. The leadership that's been out there, it's very selfish. It's very mechanical. It's very formal. It's very theoretical. Based on theory. It's not really. Um, and it's very controlling. I'll say that it's not very liberating, right? People want, just as we want to become who we are, the workforce wants to become who they are because everyone's in different stages, and people who don't understand people and they only understand mechanics and it's almost like religion of the business world.
Mhm.
They people they become very controlling, and when you do that, you actually dumb people down. And we fall, as we're rising, we fall into that as well, where, those around us are dumbing us down. And you can't allow that to happen.
Control is an interesting thing.
Mm.
And when I hear you say that, I realize, yeah, it's one thing to be submissive to the goals of an organization. It's not. It's another thing for someone to pigeonhole us, to pin us into something when we know the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So that's really good. Okay, so let's talk about what are some progressive ways that women in leadership can become more effective in the workplace. I feel like you started there by saying, produce results.
Mhm.
Be authentic.
Mhm.
Refuse to be controlled, which isn't a form of rebellion, but what it is saying, be comfortable in your own skin. So,
Yeah.
for these progressive women, and several of the discussions and meetings I've had this week have centered around, well, don't you think that sounds rather feminist? And I told a new friend even yesterday, I said, there's a huge difference between
Mhm.
being a feminist and being a female in leadership with your God given abilities and
Mhm.
being the person God created you to be.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for feminism. What I am very much wanting to help all females with and men who work with women, because
Mhm.
most of my big breaks came through men, not
Mhm.
women. It's just to say, hey, there is a place, there's a rightful place, and you can step into it.
Yeah.
So, what should women be doing differently or continue to do to help them excel in the workplace, marketplace?
Yeah. I think there's a couple things that I would say, but the first thing I would say is don't be a victim. And that's for everybody, is when we get in our mind that we're a victim and someone is doing something against us. And when you have a victim mentality, it changes the way that you react and respond to others. And it takes away your credibility. It really takes away your strength. And so when you have a victim mindset, you either become ultra submissive or you become ultra aggressive. And your perception is thrown off. So I think first off, take that away. Are you being a victim? Possibly, but don't become a victim in your mind. That's I think is a key player. If you go into a place thinking, I'm a victim of this, I'm a victim of this, of discrimination, or because I'm a woman, you're already going to lose your credibility, and your perception is going to be thrown off in a manner that you're not going to be able to operate free. So I would say that's first. Second, this kind of ties into that, is put yourself in the right environment. All right. If you're in the wrong environment, I tell people, go where you're celebrated, not tolerated. So, go somewhere who recognizes who you are, who recognizes the what you bring and the uniqueness. And you have to be self-aware with yourself, because maybe you're not as good as you think you are, right? Whether you're a man or a woman, right? And it's not because you're a woman, it's just because you need to grow and you need to become better. And so you have to understand that as well. Be self-aware. But again, if you're in the wrong environment, you're not going to grow, and you can be successful and still frustrated, and it doesn't bring you any peace. So I would say those three things just right off the bat is make sure you don't have a victim mindset. Make sure you're in the right environment that is going to celebrate who you are. And then the third is being self-aware, and making sure that you are all that you say you are. You always want to grow. You're never going to be the best. You're never going to be everything that you're going to be. Until until you die and go to heaven. I mean, so you're always growing. You're always developing. So always check yourself on that as well. Outside of that, I would say this for women. Everyone is made unique, right? And God designed men and women differently as
Yeah.
well. And an organization that is one-sided is just that. It's one-sided. And so women specifically bring a different dynamic to the workplace, and I would not hide from that. I would exalt it. I would really put it at the forefront and use that as your strength, because it's who you are. Whatever that is, that's who you are. So.
Okay, that is so good. First of all, women, don't become a victim.
Mhm.
Don't take on that mindset, whether you have been victimized or not. Go where you are celebrated, not tolerated. I love that,
Mhm.
because uh, that's the difference between being mediocre and thriving.
Mhm.
And then the third thing that we heard Dominic say was
Self-aware.
self-aware.
Mhm.
And I really had to stop and think about that. So many times, perhaps we're not. We may have a very skewed version of what we're good at and
Mhm.
what we're not. So perhaps one of the things we do is we text some of our closest friends and say, "What am I good at?
Mhm.
What is it I think I'm good at, and I'm really not?" I mean,
Mhm.
ask those people that you trust,
Yeah.
that you listen to regularly, and it may, you know, opened some things up for you to where you know where to improve and how to improve.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, because you've been in so many leadership positions, what is your biggest mistake or regret in leadership?
Mm.
What have you learned that you're like, whoo,
I would say,
I don't want to do that again?
yeah, I would. There's two things. First, there's many mistakes. First off, and there's many regrets. But first, things that I've started and I ended prematurely. I'm very achievement driven. So if I'm not moving forward, man, I'm getting frustrated. I'm ready. I can make a course correction. And there's been many times that I feel that I've gotten to a point um, that I should have kept going and I did not. Right. And so I would say that we're talking about greatness, um, every success or every pursuit of greatness, it requires a sacrifice. And I guess I'll take a detour here and dive into this a little bit. Is um, if I can use some biblical reference, Jesus, he was baptized, then he went into the wilderness, right? And so baptism, we see a level of sacrifice or a submission. We see when he goes into the wilderness, it's a level of sacrifice of he has to overcome himself. But we really don't see the fullness of his sacrifice until the Garden of Gethsemane when he's about to go to the cross. And in that, he has to overcome everything within himself to endure the cross. Now, the cross, as we know, that was his greatness. He came here to die for the sins of the world and then to be resurrected. He would have never got resurrected if he didn't die on the cross, but he would have never went to the cross if he didn't overcome himself in Gethsemane. And so I feel that all of us, we get to a place, and this comes back to what I'm saying, we get to a place where what we're pursuing requires great sacrifice. And if we're not willing to make that sacrifice and endure the journey, we'll never cross over to greatness. And that garden experience can be a day. For Jesus, it was a night, but for us, it can be years. It could be a month. It could be whatever. It could be a decade, depending on our actions within it and our ability to sacrifice to push ahead. If we're ever going to achieve any level of greatness, it requires a level of sacrifice. And the greater degree requires on both sides, right? So the greater degree of greatness, the greater level of sacrifice. And we all are going to get to the place where that level of sacrifice is at its ultimate, or what we feel is ultimate. The sacrifices and the risks I make today, I wouldn't even be able to imagine 20 years ago. When I was making risks and sacrifices 20 years ago, oh my goodness, I thought those are pinnacle. But today, they're nothing. So being willing to endure that, I would think that's my first um, regret. My second regret is staying too long. Is when when you're in a place, you've had success, and it's time to leave, but because you need to be there, maybe financially. And both of these points really come down to our own life and what we need. But you get to a place where maybe you don't have the next place yet, and so you stay at the current one, and it becomes very stagnant. And then what it will do is erode away at the success that you had, so you end up leaving on a low point instead of a high point, and that can be detrimental to a career as well. Those are my two biggest regrets.
And I think both of those speak volumes. It does take sacrifice for the things
Mm-hmm.
that we want, and it
Mm-hmm.
does look different. The stakes get higher
Mm-hmm.
the more you want.
Yeah.
And I have been there once before where I've stayed at a job too long, and I
Mm-hmm.
knew it, and yet I wasn't sure how to transition because
Yes.
this wasn't very clear. And
Yeah.
you're right, that can be a very difficult thing. And so when we first visited, we talked about that we would address how to lead from second chair.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe women are in a leadership position, but they're not the CEO, they're not the head of the company, they're not
Yeah.
the director, they're not the lead pastor. So how does a person lead from second chair well when you don't have the ultimate authority? Perhaps that's a desire or even the desire to do well where you're located. How
Mhm.
do we lead when we don't ultimately have the final say so?
I think you it comes to first when you get into the position, understanding what your boundaries are and your authority. You know, I'm someone who operates best under clear lines of authority, and then let me do my thing. You know, let me own it. If you have the opportunity to get clear expectations and clear boundaries and get the rules from the person who's put you in that spot, it allows you then to operate and to own it. So I think, in any relationship, you need to set proper expectations and boundaries. And I think especially in the second chair, it's different when you have a CEO, you have a second chair, and you have 30 other managers, right? Those 30 other managers, it's a different environment than the second chair. The second chair, you have an immense level of authority and responsibility, but you're also closest
It's
to the
true.
CEO. And that creates a lot of challenges within itself because that individual impacts you greatly on a very personal level. So I think again, this comes back to being in the right environment. We all have vision. If you're in leadership, you have to have vision. Otherwise you're not leading because you don't know where you're going. So understand, making sure that your vision fits with that CEO's vision or whoever you're serving. Knowing, does my vision complement that? Because if it doesn't complement, it's going to create friction. You're not going to be able to lead. You can manage, but you can't lead. That's a very distinct difference. So if you're in a place that you're not supposed to be, if you're in a place where your vision is not, if you can't see, you're not able to effectively lead in that environment. So all you can do is take what you're getting and then manage to that. And again, that you can survive, you can manage that way, but you're not going to lead in that manner. So I think that's the biggest thing. And if the Bible says, how can two walk together unless they agree? So if you're not in agreement now, if you're not in agreement and there's not a level of respect that allows you to operate as who you are, you can't effectively you can't effectively lead unless you could try to lead up. But that's a whole nother challenge within itself. So I think it's very important to make sure that whoever's in the first chair, you're in alignment with them if you want to lead. Or, again, if you're on the job, you may not have a choice. And then you have to understand that this is not my place to lead. This is my place to manage until I can, you know, because maybe ultimately he's the guy with the vision.
Yes.
So I have to submit to that. That's the ultimate thing. It's not my company. I'm not the CEO. So I need to support that the best I can. And in that situation, I either have to manage well or get out the way and let someone else that agrees come in.
That's so good. That's valuable, and I love the difference that you made with leading and managing. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I think we confuse those two words, and maybe we get frustrated when we're called to manage
Mm-hmm.
versus lead, especially
Yes.
if you're one of those 30 chairs
Yes.
that you
Yes.
talk about in a corporation. So it looks very different.
Yeah, it does. And throughout the years, we've gone back and forth. When I say we, I mean just corporate world or the leadership world. What's the difference between leadership? What's the difference between management? We've made it about people a lot, and I don't think that's correct personally. I think whether you're managing or leading, you still have to take care of people. You still have to serve them. You still have to develop them. I think the key differentiator is vision. A manager doesn't have to have vision. He just needs to be given vision so that he can manage according to that. I think a leader has to have vision so he can see where he's leading the people, or the organization. I think that's a key differentiator.
Ooh, now that was really good. I
Mm-hmm.
hope that those listening now and listening later got a hold of that. If you're leading, you have to have a vision. If you're managing, you're handling someone else's vision, but
Mm-hmm.
you're not having to create it. That is noteworthy. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you so
Mm-hmm.
much. Okay, so I know that you have two daughters,
I do, and a third one on the way.
and third one, congrats about that. But you do have one that's already
Mm-hmm.
at the age and stage to enter the workforce.
Yeah, she is.
So,
Mm-hmm.
what are the things, based on your experience, not only as a father but as a leader, that you tell her in going out and looking for jobs? How do you help her, to impress and
Hmm.
go out and just take it, seize the moment?
Yeah,
If you were talking to your daughter, what would you say to
yeah.
her
I,
as
I,
she enters the workforce?
yeah, I'll first put this disclaimer. This doesn't mean this is everyone's advice. I'm probably different from most people in the workforce. I'm never trying to climb the corporate ladder. I'm trying to create my own. So with my daughter,
Sure.
yeah, with my daughter, I first off have to know who she is, right? And she's a lot like her dad, a lot like her dad. And so for me, it's just more about her expressing who she is, being true to who she is, understanding the boundaries and the relationships that she has, but paving her own way, and she's an artist, so that it comes natural for her, and that's her area that she's in. I feel so strongly about being the best you that you can be. If you can be the best you can be, look, nobody can beat you being you. Nobody can do it better but you. So be the best you that you can be. Constantly grow and becoming more of who you are, and don't lose who you are. Now, again, you have to be self-aware enough, because we all have those areas that we need to get rid of and overcome. But that's just part of being the best you that you are. I think is just constantly pursuing being the best you that you are. And you got to watch your mouth too. I mean, that's the reality. Is you're in an environment where you are employed, and when someone's writing your paycheck, you do have, there has to be a level of obedience there as well. But I'm always for going and paving your own road. If you're called to that, and if you can do that, go pave your own road. It requires a lot more risk. It requires a lot more sacrifice. But if you can do it, if that's who you are, go do it. There's sacrifice either way. But I think that the greatest thing I say to anybody, to my daughters, to all of them, my 16-year-old, she struggles with confidence. I mean, she's in a top-rated performing arts school. I mean, she's surrounded by the best of her peers, and she never thinks she's good enough, because of the environment she's in. Now, I think that's always pushing her to become more. But you have to be comfortable in your own skin. Again, for myself, not having the formal education, I grew up, more in the hard knocks route. I'm not as refined as some of the people I'm around, but I'll put my results up against any of them. Most of the time I beat them, and that's not, I don't say that arrogantly, um, but that's just who I am, and you'll get respect for what you bring when you're true to yourself. Mhm.
Results for the win every time.
Yep.
Having the confidence, being true to yourself. These are all just nuggets of
Yeah.
gold. I appreciate you taking your time out from
Yes, ma'am.
on your vacation. Tell our listeners how they can keep up with you.
Well, I set up a Facebook page. It's Dominick Antonio at Small Steps Over Time. That's a saying of mine. Small steps over time equal big results. I heard that from someone else, and I've said it so much it's mine now. So uh, I'm not really active on there, but it is a way. This year, I will be becoming more active. Be writing a book, and that I'll use that as a platform. But that's probably the best way to follow me is there. I'll put updates there when I really start getting out there. But right now, I'm just doing my thing. I'm just here.
I love that. Small steps over time equal big results.
Yes, ma'am.
You've heard it here today, and great practice. So I think that I'm going to go out today and have some small steps
There you go.
I make and take while you enjoy the rest of your vacation.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Saturdays with Sherry. We welcome you to follow us on YouTube, Women in Leadership with Sherry Chester. We think that's a great way for you to listen and re-listen to these broadcasts, because every day we have a choice whether to get better or not. And I believe this is the day that you can lead yourself better than ever. We'll see you Wednesday at 12 noon for Food for Thought with Sherry Chester. Remember, Wednesdays is a biblical perspective of how we lead in leadership as women. So you take advantage of that time while you're eating lunch to get rooted and grounded in some really great leadership principles we see in the Bible. Until then, have a great weekend.